And we see this in the church right now. This study from Barna in 2024, only 21% of practicing Christians say they want to get rid of pornography completely.
Only 21% of practicing Christians want to get rid of pornography?
Yes. It's almost unbelievable if we just see it. Most of them are either okay with the amount of porn they're watching or would like to see it reduced, but not completely taken away.
Welcome to the Faithful Fathering Podcast. This is Rick Wirtz, founder and president of Faithful Fathering. It's a blessing to be with you. You know, our vision for Faithful Fathering is for every home to have a faithful father leading in Christ. And that would solve a lot of the issues, a lot of the societal woes we face today. One of those woes, of course, is pornography. And in the studio with us today is Andrew Buck, a new friend in ministry, on staff with Freedom Fight, and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about porn. Andrew is, I don't know if you're aware or not, but back in about 2015, 2016, a dad in one of our groups, his son, teenage son came in, 14-year-old son came in and asked him, he says, "Hey, Dad, I can't quit porn on my own. Can you help me? I've been viewing porn for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And it just broke Dad down. He didn't understand what was going on and the fact that he wasn't aware, kind of like what you're talking about. Your parents weren't aware that you were struggling or that you had access porn, and that was the case here. And so a friend said, "Hey, can we get together and pray for this dad?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we got about 15 dads together, and we were planning to pray over him. Mm. And he brought all of us up to date that it isn't the magazines anymore that we grew up with. It was the electronic versions and all the things that are going on, the 3 A's, the accessibility, affordability, availability, I think were the three. It broke our heart to hear what was going on. And we said, well, what do we want to do? We can't just leave it here. And we decided that we would bring our youth directors in. And so the next month we got together, all prayed, about 15 dads, about 10 youth directors. And the youth directors just said, "Dads, we've been telling you about this for years." I said, "Okay, don't chastise us. Just tell us what you want to do now. You got our ear now." Yeah. And I said, well, we need to have a broad visibility of this whole issue. Said, let's have a large conference and just get the word out there. And I said, well, what do we call it? He says, "Call it what it is. Let's talk about porn." That made for tough email distributions, but we ended up calling it LTAP. Our first event was at Chapel Wood, UMC in West Houston, where we had about 600 dads and moms present and a couple hundred youth. But we had a 1-2 punch of Tim Mavergeorge giving the stats and facts. Tim was one of the pioneers on the sexual addiction issues. And so he really brought everybody up to speed. And then we had a lovely mom, Laura Gallier, came in and gave God's design for sexuality. And it's just kind of a 1-2 punch. And we immediately were, as requested, we went to the south of Houston, down in Sagemont. They hosted a conference. And then we had a third conference up in the Woodlands at Faith Bible, where we had 1,100 folks in there, where we blasted the light on this issue. And it was really eye-opening to me, and made it very clear that this problem isn't going anywhere, is it?
No.
So tell us a little bit about, what is it that, why is this such a prolific issue out there, that this pornography?
Yeah, that's a big question, a good one, and I don't know if there's one reason exactly, but there's a lot of different ones, like you said, the accessibility, the access, just the addictive nature of it, but also just the curiosity is generally what this starts in, especially for younger kids. I was in 6th grade. Like I said, I had an iPod Touch and had unlimited access, right? And and even today, if your daughter or your son has a phone and they're in bed and it's in their room, it is easier for them to access pornography than to go and get a drink of water.
My goodness.
That is how easy it is and how quick it is. It's 2 clicks to being on full pornography, right? Unlimited.
What do the statistics reflect these days? I mean, is it boys and girls today?
Yeah. So for men, let's just say all men, right? It's about 78% in 2024. So last year, Barna came out with an updated stats from the porn phenomenon that they released in 2014. Right. So 10 years later, they did it again. So 78% of men are watching porn
on
at any level,
weekly or just accessing porn.
Yeah, all levels. That they would when they say, "Hey, I'm watching porn" at some level throughout the year. It's not every day necessarily,
right?
But you look at you look at these weekly stats, and it's 60 to 70% is weekly. So it's still a significant number. And then you look at that the younger generation. It's 83% is the Gen Z.
Wow.
It's just watching porn.
Wow.
But for women, in 2014, their stats are almost zero, right? 0%, 0 to 5 for the younger generation. And now it's at 34% of all women are watching porn. So 1 in 3.
And what's driving that?
I think there's a lot of different factors, but probably some main ones is, some identity, trying to learn, like using it as a sex education at some level. Right. A big principle just for parenting kids in this area is, man, we can't and I think every area, but for pornography, it's so important is we can't shy away from talking about difficult things, because what we don't talk about in our families, man, the world's going to fill it in.
That's so important, Andrew. Thanks for bringing that up. And I always use this kind of window to promote defendyoungminds.org. That's Kristen. I always go blank on her name, but she has a book out there, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. That from a very young age, you let a kid know that anything under the panties or whatever, these are bad pictures, right?
Yeah.
And it opens the door for dialogue from a very young age to talk about these things. So they know from the onset that the home and mom and dad are safe places for such discussions, right?
Yeah, it's not even a question of if my kid's going to see it, it's when. Okay. And the average age is, there are people say now 8 to 11 years old is first exposure. And really,
and you were in 6th grade yourself, so that's 12, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It was right in that prime age gap, and young minds are so impressionable, is what they say, and it really does begin changing the way your brain works and the reward and how it functions, and it really can. There's a reason why we don't allow tobacco, alcohol for kids, for tobacco till they're 18 and alcohol to 21 because it's addictive, right? Right. And so it's the same thing with pornography. Is if you look at just the dopamine and just look at the addiction goes extremely deep when negative emotions are supplemented with high amounts of dopamine. So if I feel bad, if I'm lonely, if my parents are in their living room fighting, and I'm escaping to my room, and I'm looking for something to make my brain's that fight or flight response, right? It's okay. I can fight this or I can flee it. Okay, if I'm fleeing, I'm looking for something to save me, to make me feel better, and that's what pornography does. Is it comforts us, and then that goes very deep. So when I have those similar emotions, I get my boss is upset with me, my wife's upset with me, I'm feeling shameful about something else. Oh, this is what makes me feel better. That's like a high level of how this kind of pornography can play out for youth that are using it, being exposed to it, and how it produces a life of addiction. And porn companies know that, and that's why they're targeting kids.
And I read somewhere where it actually scars the brain. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I haven't fully heard that or read all the research, but I believe that it definitely has lasting impacts on it. One thing that is for sure true is that our brains can be restored, they can be renewed. Right. Romans 12:2, right?
Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Sure.
Right. God's made it really clear. It's like, hey, we need to avoid the worldly patterns, right? Don't conform to what's going on. It has consequences.
Right.
And we have brain scans that we can see that measures oxygen and blood flow, basically what's being used in your brain. And someone who's using pornography, the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, actually begins to shrink. So that's what is like the brakes of your brain that helps you make good decisions. That's why you can't rent a car for a long time, right? And until I think it used to be 25, and I think 25. It's become maybe a little bit, they've eased down on it. I don't know if they should, but regardless, it changes your brain. But what we see, which science is just now catching up to, when you stop using pornography for 6 months, your brain really begins to heal itself, and that part of the brain starts to be used again and begin restoring itself. Just like what the Bible said.
Well, that's what I know, that the brain isn't fully developed, so it's a little more susceptible to malleable, I guess, to the images, and it takes. And I always think of you've heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And that's where there's documentation that children that have been abused will actually internalize the experience and absolutely bury it and it may not come out until they're in college, where they all of a sudden go off the rails. Nobody knows why. And I think a similar deal with pornography. They can kind of bury it, keep it hidden, and it could come back and cause a lot of problems later on, right?
Yeah, that's
relationally and what have you, right?
Exactly. We would classify that as trauma in our ministry, and that's one of the roots of the addiction that we would say needs to be addressed. Is identifying the message. Okay, what's the message I'm believing about myself? What's a lie that's rooted in this moment? Also, what's God's truth about this that I can meditate on? Then what's I need to grieve this. I need to really realize, man, that was really hurtful that this happened to
process
me.
It, right?
Process it, and then sharing it with others, and then connecting the dots to how is this impacting today? Is there any correlation? And so that's a process we try to help people go through in our when we're going through our program.
Right. One thing that really disturbs me today, Andrew, is there's no remorse. So for so many high school, college age, even adult men, there's no remorse for. I mean, I remember the magazines. You get caught looking at a magazine, you cover that up real quick, that type of thing. And but where is that taking us? That we're all of a sudden deciding this is an acceptable behavior in this fantasy world of pornography, that it's okay to do this while we're trying to have a relationship in the real world.
Yeah, man, that's another really tough one. But like you're saying, I think you're so right. And so one of our friends, they have a 12-year-old, or he was on the bus going to football practice. And there was kids 3 rows up with him, just watching pornography out loud on their phones and on the bus going to practice. It's like, that's the culture, that's society. We would say that's the sexualized society that we live in. And so the growth area there is holiness. And so we can't control what we can't control. Right? All we can do is control ourselves. And so we have to work on really growing in our personal holiness with the Lord and our walk to be able to begin to really walking with that. And we see this in the church right now. This study from Barna in 2024, only 21% of practicing Christians say they want to get rid of pornography completely.
Only 21% of practicing Christians want to get rid of pornography?
Yes. It's almost unbelievable. If we just see, most of them are either okay with the amount of porn they're watching, or would like to see it reduced, but not completely taken away. That's about 50% is in that category.
That's called sexualized, isn't it? And of course, for today, I mean, some of your commercials on television today are porn from the old days. I mean, it's soft porn with the way young ladies dress or the way things are presented. So often, even conversations are allowing words to come through that weren't allowed in previous decades, right? What I just really think about is just what is God's standard for holiness, right? What's God calling? To be holy means to be set apart. And as a whole, as the Big C Church, man,
we're really struggling in this area, particularly to be set apart. We look, the amount of porn consumed in the church is the same as outside the church. The stats are the same.
That's exactly why, we've said many times, faithful fathering works to partner with the church to encourage and equip dads, because church mirrors society more than influences society. And so I think it's so important for you to get the word out there to say, we can put on a good show on Sundays, but Monday through Saturday is where you're really bringing up a generation either in this sexualized secular world, or you're bringing them up in a biblical worldview. And I think that's what's your encouragement for the average dad out there to just say, how do I address this at my church, or do I just make daggum sure that I'm doing all I can at home to protect and again, not isolate our children, educate our children, but to protect my home? Do I step? What would your encouragement be for a dad out there that is all of a sudden just realizing that, hey, some of his buddies are struggling and they think it's okay?
Yeah. Man, so many good things here. First, like you said, which I imagine you guys share similar ideas here, is, man, we have to disciple our kids.
Absolutely.
And, that's our starting point. And we also need to disciple ourselves and lead ourselves. And, man, if you're statistically, most of the guys listening are struggling at some level with pornography. We need to get free. We need to find freedom ourselves and begin taking this really seriously. And there is resources, not doing it by yourself.
Well, the next segment, we're going to get into the heart of freedom fight. But tell me this, Andrew, is in the world of alcoholism, I grew up in a violent alcoholic home. You always heard this term functional alcoholic, which I thought was a bunch of bahooey. But is there a perception out there that you can be a functional porn addict?
Yeah, I think they wouldn't say they're addicted. Because it's different, because they just think I can just use pornography. It's not impacting anybody else. It's a secret sin. I don't feel great using it, but it's not as bad as hooking up with someone else, right? Men particularly, but people in general are great at minimizing, rationalizing, right, and minimizing just all of our struggles here.
I don't know how someone can watch and think that it is just impacting them. That breaks because I think of. Are you familiar with the butterfly factor? That whole idea that you could. They had a bunch of butterflies in there, and they male and female. And then they pulled all the female butterflies out, and they dressed up a cardboard butterfly, just a little more makeup, if you will, more color, more a little sexier to all the, and then all the male butterflies lit on that cardboard butterfly. Then they pull out the cardboard butterfly, and they put the females back in, and they didn't want anything to do with the females. If that isn't a message to say, this is a fantasy relationship that you're getting caught up in. And it is going to impact your relationship and marriage somehow or another, right?
Yes, 100%.
Not to mention all the downstream stuff of sex trafficking and where people are trying to live out some of this stuff, and child trafficking and what have you. What are your? I know you're not involved in the sex trafficking side and that impact, but what word of wisdom would you say that this indeed does flow downstream? Huh?
Yeah, I think it's like you're saying. It's just really helpful just to know, if you are using pornography, that you are at some level supporting that industry. Right, and not to heap a load of shame onto you if you are struggling, but to help you return to reality a little bit, that this isn't just made up stuff. It's not all fake, even though that the AI piece is rising drastically. It's still impacting people's lives. It's impacting kids' lives. And that is ultimately what's fueling the sex trafficking that's happening across the world.
Right.
And a lot of it comes from the United States, especially
Absolutely.
even right where we live is a kind of a hot spot.
I know several folks who go on mission trips. They did not send blonde young ladies there because everybody assumed a blonde in the U.S. was a porn star. That was their perception overseas to some degree. But that's a good word. Dads, hear that. This is not about convicting it is about convicting, but it's not about guilt or shame. We don't want that shadow. May the Lord bless His light through that shadow in your life if there is guilt and shame associated with it. But we are talking about accepting responsibility. Manhood has been defined as reject passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously, and expect God's eternal reward. And that means to accept responsibility, that pornography is hurting someone. It may be hurting your marriage. It may be hurting a relationship. It may be fueling the industry downstream. While you may not think you're paying anything for it, there are advertisers and others that are benefiting from you tuning in. So my encouragement is to take all that Andrew has shared in this segment and take responsibility for who you are and whose you are. That's the dad you're called to be, and that's the dad the next generation needs to see. God bless. Godspeed.